What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Alright soldiers, and in today's video we're going to be doing the Forestcraft reveals. I've been hearing a lot of talk of the B/Nurtura. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if I said it incorrectly. But I know we're going to be having new cards that are going to be more beast-like cards and, you know, things like that. So I'm really excited to see what Set 7 has for Forestcraft, so let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so starting off with our first card, we have Latika the Stoneclaw. So she's a 4-cost 5/5. You can evolve her for 1, but this effect can only be used if the number of cards played this turn is 5 or more. And when an Aterian Great Tree comes onto the field, you recover 1 play point. Alright, so we have our first Beast or Natura type card, which is pretty interesting because you can't evolve this follower unless you play at least 5 or more cards. So it looks like the Natura deck is going to be playing a lot of cards in one turn. So let's go ahead and figure out what this Aterian Great Tree is. Alright, so looking at the Aterian Great Tree, so it's a 1-cost amulet, so when this card leaves the field, draw a card, and then discard a card, and you can also activate for 1 play point to put this card to your graveyard. Alright, so it's pretty interesting that we're able to make a combo like this, because you can use regular Forestcraft cards like Ancient Elf to put cards like this back into your hand. You can get the effect because it did leave the field, so you can draw a card, discard a card, don't have to worry about putting anything back to your hand, because sometimes, you know, hand size might be a problem. I don't know how it might be in the Natura deck, but I know usually in other Forestcraft decks where you're bouncing cards back into your hand and you just generate another card, and then putting that card back, you start filling up your hand size. And then also having the ability to just spend 1 play point to get rid of it is also nice too. Alright, so looking at the Stoneclaw evolve, so she turns into a 6/6, but on evolve she has Storm, and when an Aterian Great Tree comes into the field, recover 1 play point. Alright, so it looks like Latika is going to be using the Aterian Great Tree tokens as much as possible, and it looks like you might be able to play them for free off of other effects, which might be interesting too, because you'll be playing them for free and then getting 1 play point back, or because it wouldn't really make sense if you just spend 1 for the amulet just to get 1 play point back to probably use the 1 play point to discard it. Nah, that doesn't seem too tempo-y if you're going to be using at least 5 cards to get this evolve card out. Alright, and next up we have Cynthia the Queen's Blade. So she's a 6-cost 4/6, and as long as this card is on the field, all fairy tokens on your field get Storm and Assail. And when a fairy token comes onto your field, it gets +2 attack. And then when this card comes into play, put a Fairy Wisp into your EX area, give it +2 attack to all your fairy tokens on your field. Alright, so it looks like Amata's Fairies has a new boss monster to play around with. This card is pretty good just because you can play fairies at any point in time after this card is played, or when this card is played to get an extra buff to the fairies too. You'll be getting +2 attack no matter what, and then them having Storm and Assail, so you can deal with those followers that are unengaged, so you can have some more removal. Alright, and next up we have Primal Giant, so it's a 9-cost 7/7, and when this card is discarded from your hand, put an Aterian Great Tree in your EX area, and when you play this card, put 4 Natura cards from your field to the graveyard. You can subtract 4 from this card's cost, and when it comes into play, you choose a Forestcraft follower with an original cost of 5 or less from your graveyard, and you put it onto the field. Alright, so it's pretty nice that you're able to get a good discard effect off of this card to go ahead and put an Aterian Great Tree into your EX area, which is nice because you'll probably be using an Aterian Great Tree ability to go ahead and pitch him as well, so you can go ahead and replace the token that you have in your EX area. And then you can also put 4 Natura cards into the graveyard, and then you can subtract 4, so he gets a 5-cost 7/7, which allows you on his fanfare to play a 5-cost, and whatever 5-cost that you do play, they get their fanfares, and you also get their stats. Alright, and moving on, so we have Cetus the Beast Blade. So he's a 5-cost 3/5. So you can evolve him for 2, but he has Ward, and at the start of your end phase, add 4 to your leader's health. And this turn, if your follower was placed into the graveyard from the field, this card gets +2/+2. Alright, so it's really nice that this card just hits the field, and as long as it gets to your end phase, you get to heal 4. So you spent 5 for heal 4, which is pretty nice. But if your follower traded into another follower and then hits the graveyard, this card does come out as a 5/7, which is pretty scary because that's some big stats to have for a ward. Alright, and looking at Cetus evolve, so he turns into a 4/6, and he still has Ward, and at the start of your end phase, add 4 to your leader's health, and as long as this turn, if your follower hit the graveyard, he still gets the +2/+2, which will turn him into a 6/8. But on evolve, you choose a follower with an original cost of 3 or less from your graveyard, and you put it onto the field. Alright, so that ability checks out. I was wondering what we needed to pay a total of 7 for, so you pay 7 to potentially get a 6/8 body out if a follower did go into the cemetery this turn. But having a 6/8 on board as a ward and then playing another body and you get their fanfare is pretty nice. Alrighty, next up we have Send 'em Packing, so it's a 0-cost spell. So you choose a Litica, the Stoneclaw on your field, and you give a +1/+1. And then when it's on combo 5, you deal damage to all the followers on the enemy field equal to its attack value. Alright, so this spell actually goes pretty nicely with the deck, you know, buffing up your legendary card that eventually has Storm when you evolve it. And then getting into that combo 5 to make sure she can really stick and not have any oppressors. So getting into that combo 5 and then dealing at least a total of like a real scenario, or the biggest scenario, excuse me, of a total of 8 to the entire enemy field is pretty nice. And alright, next up we have Blossom Spirit, so it's a 3-cost 2/3. You can evolve for 1, but when it comes into play, Fanfare, you put an Tyrian Great Tree or a Fairy into your EX area. Well, this is a nice multi-choice card because you're able to choose if you want a Fairy for the Cynthia boss monster or you want to go for the Great Tree for the Stoneclaw. Alright, and then we have Blossom Spirit Evolve. So she turns into a 3/4, but on Evolve you choose a follower on the enemy field, deal 2 damage to it, and if there are 3 or more cards in your EX area, deal 4 damage instead. So it's nice that this Evolve card also goes along with both the Fairy and the Tyrian Great Tree, the Stoneclaw engine, just because both those type of cards are going to be in your EX area, and having at least 3 in the EX area is going to deal 4 damage to something, and then you can then trade Blossom Spirit into another follower. Alright, and next up we have Avatar of Fruition, so it's a 2-cost 3/2, and as long as this card is on the field, when you play an Tyrian Great Tree, subtract 1 from its cost. Fanfare put an Tyrian Great Tree into the EX area. So this is the card that's going to be making those tree tokens free, which is going to be pretty nice because for the full combo of the deck, you need those cards to be free to recover those 1 play point.
Yeah, TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do. Just to get you away. You pull me too close, now we hesitate. Every single move you make, it makes me feel like